Elemental is a 2023 Pixar movie that me and my mom saw in theaters in September of that year, which, getting this right out of the way, is just alright. In regards to animated films I reviewed so far for Sean's yearly reviews, it's definitely leagues above something like Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland, and especially Ruby Gilman Teenage Kraken, but nowhere close to being all that special. I'll give it this. I'd still take this movie over The Polar Express because the characters at least have names and an actual personality, but I'd honestly take something like Turning Red or The Road to El Dorado more than this film because they're a lot more interesting than this movie. So, what is Elemental about? This movie revolves around a fire element named Ember. She's about to be put in charge of her father's shop, on one condition, where as long as she doesn't blow up, she'd be put in charge. Ember fails, and she ends up having water get into the basement by accident as a result, leading to the most predictable story that you could think of, where Ember needs to keep her lie going, as she's assisted by a water element named Wade, whom over time she falls in love with. And together, they need to find out what is causing this water leak to happen. To get the major issues with this movie off of my chest, so that way I can blow off some major steam regarding what I think of this movie, the film is very generic, and on top of that, the film plays things extremely safe, to the point where it kind of felt like I was watching an Illumination movie. Weird how the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which came out the exact same year, feels more in line with the Pixar movie than the actual Pixar movie, because where the Super Mario Bros. Took a chance and succeeded in the end, despite being rushed, Elemental feels bland. And that's honestly a shame too, because the movie's premise does sound promising, and the world-building aspect of this movie was very well done. But the film barely takes any sort of chance with anything else, because this movie is entirely run on tropes and cliches that have been beaten to the ground, to the point where I honestly do believe that this is one of Pixar's most predictable movies. Coincidentally enough, DreamWorks' most predictable movie came out less than a month after this movie. Because everything that this movie did, you've seen elsewhere. That it's not a surprise that Ember's lie that she's been keeping is gonna come back to her later in the film to cause her not to be put in charge of her father's shop. A Bug's Life literally did this exact same thing over 26 years earlier, and it was criticized for this exact same thing as well, even back then too. And I think I know the reason as to why this movie is doing this. The film is style over substance, because I'll be completely honest, the animation is absolutely gorgeous in this movie. Some of the best animation from the studio yet, with the film's interpretations of elements like fire and water, with textures that are a lot more different than the last. Granted, there were films that had better animation in the exact same year that this movie was released, like Across the Spider-Verse or TMNT Mutant Mayhem, but the animation is amazing regardless. But that's the thing though, the film puts its animation first and puts its writing second. Which, getting onto that aspect real quick, the film is essentially just another Romeo and Juliet story, where two characters from two different sets of families fall in love to the disapproval of both of them. Though in this movie's case, Wade's family does approve of Ember, and also, the characters are not even anything new. From the very first announcements of this movie's release, the film often got compared to that old Fire Boy and Water Girl Flash game. I'd even say that this movie is essentially the film adaptation of the game. Although, maybe they decided to change the genders around so that they didn't face any legal consequences from this. And strangely enough, the way that the characters are written in this movie does indicate that the main characters' genders were originally going to be the other way around. As in the movie, Ember is the more aggressive and stern of the two, while Wade is more emotional. Maybe they decided to change the genders around so that they didn't come off as sexist, since those kinds of traits are associated with the opposite gender after all, or maybe they did it because they wanted to make a hilarious pun about how Wade said that Ember is hot. Even though women can find men hot as well, it's not a gender-specific thing at all, movie. And this is also an indicator as well, because Wade comes off as kind of a damsel in distress in a lot of these sequences, where Ember needs to save him. Although, maybe they also did this because, you know, females need to be more progressive nowadays and act as if they need no man, even though some of the most popular and underrated shows like Gravity Falls and OKKO were gender neutral, and their gender didn't matter. And also, and I'm going to be completely honest right now, I really don't like Wade in this movie. The problem with him is not so much the fact that he's hateable. He's definitely tolerable in comparison to Gary from Sahara or Ping from Duck Duck Goose. The problem with him instead is that he's completely useless to the plot. And the only kind of purpose that he serves to the movie is getting Ember showered with bad luck throughout the film's runtime. Granted, he didn't realize that Ember's shot meant so much to her father, which was definitely on Amber for not telling him sooner. And him coming into the feature was all on Amber, though when dealing with the kind of pressure that she goes through in the movie, it's understandable why she has constant anger issues. But plot-wise, Wade has no other purpose to the feature besides crying constantly and saying absolutely stupid things to easily make either Ember or her family lash out at him, saying that the food is good when it's watered down. Those are the most wrong choice of words that you could say, period. And a lot of the other times, he's used as a literal plot device, such as in the sequence where Wade basically tries to butter Ember up by taking her to the garden center that got flooded, or basically trying to stick his nose into Ember's personal business. Yes, during the fake-out death sequence in this movie, add this movie to the list of tropes that has been overused with this trope, Ember's father lets her know that she doesn't have to run the business to make him happy, but before this scene, she was under this impression, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Because as shown in the movie, Ember's family trusts her to carry their legacy, and Ember's under a lot of pressure in the movie. And so, to have Wade crash the party on her big day to cause the unnecessary Act 2 breakup serves no purpose. It's just here to basically dunk on Ember for her life's decisions, despite it not being Wade's business on what career she pursues. The message itself is great, admittedly, but I do believe that this message could have and should have been done better. Because there's a way that you could deliver this message without trying to push the career onto another person if they're unsure of what they want to do. And that's exactly what Wade does in the movie, crashing the party to try and pressure and force an answer out of Ember, which honestly feels kind of wrong in a way. I would have preferred it if they had the glass break, and as soon as Ember is put in charge of the shop and the film plays out with the shop flooding, then it could do this. And I think the message might have come out a lot more strong as a result. So, in regards to Pixar movies, I would definitely put this one as one of their weaker movies. It's an above average 6 out of 10, though that's only because of the animation and the message alone. I'm sorry I didn't have all that much to really say about this movie, but the film doesn't really give me all that much to talk about, despite the fact that I wanted to talk about it for a while. Though, if I'm being completely honest, out of the 3 trailers that were revealed to us in the spring of 2023, this film is honestly the best of the 3, considering what I think about Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, and Wish has already become one of the most infamous Disney movies of all time. But regardless, Elemental is just fine.
Everything